Okay, Rabbi, so good morning. It is so nice to be together. So again, what we're doing is we're trying to spend a little bit of time understanding some of the communal institutions that surround us. We take for granted and most of the time don't pay for and appreciate, but nonetheless, it's happening all around us. And one of the things we would appreciate today is Hakashrus. Vaad Hakashrus, but in general, Schreier, understanding what's going on. We are very excited to welcome Rabbi Ya'akov Trump. Rabbi Schreier is no stranger to our community, Baruch Hashem. Rabbi Schreier, in our community, the claim to fame is Rabbi Ashi Schreier's uncle. But if you really realized, then you would know that there's a lot of other claims to fame as well. Is that Rabbi Schreier is a Hakashrus coordinator at the OU, where he's worked for 27 years. And I'll tell you, not a week goes by where I don't ask Rabbi Schreier a question. Just and I guess I would argue that almost every rabbi in the country has the same record, which is not a week that goes by that there's not a question that Rabbi Schreier answers, because of his incredible accessibility and his expertise in kashrus. And this is not a static market. This is a market which keeps changing. And so every few minutes there's new products, there's new supply chain changes, and nonetheless Rabbi Schreier is always on it with the latest, and also is available selflessly for the community. Rabbi Schreier grew up as also the son of Rabbi Max Schreier, and served in the pulpit for over 12 years before transitioning full-time to kashrus, and now moved to our community, where we're blessed to have him as a leader and also a Baruch Hashem, not just a leader but a role model of what it means to be a person in kashrus, to look with Yashar, being Yashar, and also being a mensch, which is incredible. Rabbi Schreier, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
There's so much we want to cover today, and that's the problem, is we don't have enough time to even cover it. But let's just start on a personal level as well. You know, just you grew up as a shul rabbi's son. You were a shul rabbi, and you were involved in kashrus. How did kashrus arrive at your doorstep? How did you get there?
So just to clarify, I did grow up as a rabbi's son. I actually, when I was in YU Smicha, I wasn't sure that I was going to go into the pulpit. And when I started with Rabbi Lutkin in homiletics, I was running the Hashkama meeting in my father's shul, and I started speaking at the end of davening on Shabbos morning with one caveat. Right, the Hashkama meeting speech, it doesn't happen, and if it happens, certainly the first rule was that there had to be time, and the second rule had to be that the rabbi wasn't speaking also. One at a Hashkama meeting is a challenge, two forget about. So that was the condition, and also the timing, because at the time I was also leaning somewhere. So I had to leave at a certain point before I would be too late to lane. But one Shabbos, I said at Dvar Torah at the end of davening. It was actually Parshas Achrimos, because I remember it. In the contrast, I have a couple stories to share. You know, starting in sports and ending in the Chazon Ish. But I told the story in the beginning of Parshas Achrimos. Rashi comes to answer the question: why is it that Rashi has to repeat to us that Achrei Moshe Bnei Aaron? They already died 2 parshios ago. We had a whole Tazria and Mitzvah in between. Why is Rashi coming and telling us again? Why is the Torah coming and telling us again Achrei Moshe Bnei Aaron? Rashi gives a mashal to a doctor. A doctor tells someone not to eat something because it's not healthy, versus a doctor who tells someone not to eat something because he could die like so and so died. So Rashi says, this one would encourage him a little more than the second one. So that's why the Torah comes and reminds us, Achrei Moshe Bnei Aaron, that this happened already. You better listen. After davening, a doctor in my father's shul comes over to me and tells me Ma'aseh Shahaya this past week. He's a gastroenterologist, and lo aleinu, he had diagnosed a patient with colon cancer a few months before, and he was coming for a follow-up visit. The doctor says to him, "Did you have surgery?" He said, "No, I decided I'm going to try alternate medicine. I'm going to do this." So the doctor turns to him and he says, "You know what Darryl Strawberry has?" He said, "I'm not talking about all the other things, but he also had colon cancer at the time." And he said, "If you don't have surgery, you're going to die." The guy scheduled surgery on Monday. Just the Torah coming alive in real terms, not just talking about a Rashi in Parshas Achrimos, but that it's a living Torah, and that actually someone was listening to what you said, which is also something. Having grown up in a rabbi's home, you get to see some of the questions and the challenges that people bring to you. You don't necessarily always see the sipuk hanefesh that you get from someone asking and responding. So that was when I decided that I was actually going to go for the pulpit. When I was finishing YU Smicha, and I was getting married, the OU ran their first Ask OU Advanced Seminars in Kashrus seminar. This was in the summer of 1996, right before I got married. And I had always taken an interest in Kashrus. Growing up in Flatbush, as the years went on, there were numerous tudos and windows that were a challenge that I always wanted to create a situation where we could have that unified situation. So I was always interested in, and my father, Zechron Livracha, was on the Rabbinic Hakashrus Commission of the OU, so he used to also come back and pepper us with some of the stories that he would be on his monthly meetings that he would go to. So Kashrus was always an interest to me. After I got married, I was still learning in the yeshiva for another year, and I got involved in a Kashrus project where I was in touch with some of the people in the OU on a regular basis. One time I went to call my wife a calling card or something, and instead I called someone in the OU. That's how often I was calling them. And as that year was going on, I was also searching for various pulpits. It wasn't panning out. So I asked the rabbi who was working, who I had been contacting, is there anything available for the summer in the OU? I started working in the OU as an intern for about 9 months. I got involved in a couple of different projects, and I had actually interviewed for a pulpit in Brooklyn that was voting on a Tuesday night for between me and another person for the shul. And the next day at about 10:30 in the morning, Rabbi Ya'akov called me and told me that in 2 weeks they were hiring me full-time in the OU. And 20 minutes later I heard I came in second for the shul. Siyata Dishmaya, whatever, Baruch Hashem. So I've been there. I've been in the OU since my oldest is now 28. I've been there since a month before she was born. But that's how I got involved in Kashrus. Afterwards, I became a pulpit rabbi I was in Jackson Heights for a few years, and then in North Belmore for 12 years. And when we ended up moving here to the Five Towns about 11 years ago, my father, Zechron Livracha, ended up moving in with us. But that wasn't the reason. My son had started high school, and the back and forth to the Five Towns. My brothers can tell you how often I was in their house because I was picking this up, or I was waiting for someone to come back, or he had a late night something. When my son started DRS in high school, the night seder 2 nights a week was just too hard for him to handle because he was coming home 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night from night seder, and what if he had homework? What if he had a test? Right? So that's when we decided to move here. But I've been in Kashrus ever since.
Unbelievable. And just to clarify, what would you say is your specific role in the OU at this point?
So I take care of the restaurants and the caterers. When I came in, I started working for actually who's now the head of the Vaad, but he was in that position in the OU at the time. And when he left, I became responsible for the restaurants and for the caterers. And when the other person who had replaced him left, I became responsible for the restaurants and the caterers. I take care of mostly restaurants and caterers. I deal with a lot of different agencies through the world, and also, as Rabbi Trump said, I try to be available for Rabbanim who, I see one Rosh Yeshiva in YU once said to me before Pesach, he said, I don't think the Malabatim expect me to know every last new innovation in Pesach, in Pesach products. I said, as long as you have the understanding that when you're asking me a question, whatever learning you're doing while I get you the answer is in my credit, we're good.
It's true. Every Pesach, a number of Rabbanim get together to give our Schreier a gift, just in a small token of appreciation. Because why do they keep inventing new things every year? And Rabbi Schreier really gives us the inside track, because unfortunately the industry is just advancing so fast when it comes to this. Well, I just like to take a step backwards when it comes to Kashrus. So, Kashrus, you hear sometimes people throwing around terms, it's politics and it's this and it's that, and people have no idea what's really going on. And I think it's this convergence of religious oversight and people's money, right? Which is a very difficult combination. But let's be honest. So let's say I have somebody in the community who invites me out for lunch, and I trust them, so I go to eat them for lunch, right? I don't need a mashgiach there, I go to them for lunch, it's fine, right? why suddenly when they start selling food, like, like we have this, we're like, well, why do we need a hashgacha in the first place?
So that's my second story. So when I was in my first Rabbanus, the president of the shul used to share with me a story in how to deal with people. He said, someone once came to the Chazon Ish, and he said to him that he made a shidduch with his daughter. Anyone who needs a shidduch for their children or their family should happen b'karov in the right time with the right person. He made a shidduch with his daughter, and the guy's a Talmud Chacham and a Yari Shamayim. So the Chazon Ish turns to him and he says, Talmud Chacham, I'm sure you tested him in Kol HaTorah and you asked him every Shach and Taz in your day, and he answered it perfectly. Yari Shamayim, perchance you dealt with him in business? And I think that's a very, very instructive into the question you're asking, because unfortunately, a number of the incidents that have rocked the Jewish world and the Hakashrus world over the last couple decades have not really been from a non-Jewish person who, what do you expect? But, the incident that happened in Muncie 20 plus years ago, or other incidents, the person in Muncie was the director of tuition in the yeshiva of Spring Valley. He was a Balkore, a Baltokea. He had a butcher shop. Right? He was a person who was said about that if he saw someone on Tuesday buying blueberries in the supermarket, they wouldn't get a tuition reduction. That's how medayik he was with the we'll call it mamon akihila. Right. So when it comes to someone's finance, and here this person was going ahead and relabeling non-kosher chickens to make a few extra dollars. I think one of Rabbanim was saying on a shir last week. He said, as the world, he gave his wife a get and he moved to Eretz Yisrael, and he remarried and he was living in Yerushalayim, and Rav's parents ended up living across the hall from him in Eretz Yisrael, and he was inviting people over and this Rav heard about this and he went to his Rebbe. What am I supposed to do with this? He said, you should stop it right away. No one should be giving, there's certain people who do something, there's Erev Rosh Hashanah, we hear, Hirurei Tshuva, but someone who does something like that needs to stay away from, just like we have in other areas of life. If someone has done something, you really need to watch and be very careful. So even someone who's Shomer Shabbos his entire life and understands it, does not necessarily understand the intricacies and the details. They'll do whatever they understand, but Rabbi, when there's a question of hafrashas challah, right, you have to separate challah from the dough, right? So now, Rabbi, I know I have to do it from challah, but what about bread? What about cake? What about what they call balila raka? The sponge cakes and what's that? Oh, I never heard of it. Right? So whatever they've heard of, they're going to keep, but once there's a business, let me get into Costco. Right? I said between Costco and Trader Joe's, I wouldn't have a job with all the rabbis bothering me if Costco and Trader Joe's had everything under a reputable hashgacha. But you see these hashgachas from different worlds, or things that used to have and don't have, and right? That's something. I mean, this past Friday, I got a text from a rav whose wife was making soup with a Trader Joe's soup mix. That had a hashgacha for many years, and she happened to look on the package, and it did not have this hashgacha. So it wasn't an OU product, but Baruch Hashem, I have a relationship with other agencies. I texted the rabbi from the other agency. He explained to me what the situation was. I got back to the rav. He did what he did. But this is something that no one, no matter how religious he is and how you're going to be relying on them to eat in their house. Once it comes to a business decision, the Trader Joe's flour is fine, it's not an issue, but the Trader Joe's flour is much cheaper than the Glitz flour, right? And if I'm buying, cases of flour a week, right? That's real money. And if you transfer it over to oil, you transfer it over to more sensitive kashrus ingredients, a person, when he's bohol al mamono, I'll give you a timely example of something that's going on right now. The bill that was passed to start with vouchers, etc., in this community, also in New York, also included lunch for schools. Right? So now, my wife teaches in Shalamis. Right? For the last 20 years, you had vendors who were bringing lunch on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Right? And the parents were paying a Hein Rav for a lot of money for for lunch. Now, stock finished. Right? A store that was getting thousands and thousands of dollars every year, guaranteed income. Right? The school lunch programs that stores are doing pay their bills. Everything after that is revach, is with profit. Right? So you can imagine that this comes on Erev Rosh Hashanah, where right, whether it's bagels, whether it's food, whatever it is, they were doing every day to these schools for many, many years, and now cut out from under them. Right? Guy's going to have to start looking to cut corners in order to A, live the lifestyle he was living, B, maybe even be able to pay his bills, because for some stores this was their lifeline. Right? So you never know when a person is bolo al mamono, and right, he needs some level of supervision, because right, the person at their home, even if it's that store owner, is still not gonna. So he won't bring home the prime rib. He'll bring home the minute roast. He'll figure out. He'll take the end pieces of gefilte fish to bring home for you for Shabbos. Not the big. They're not a full loaf, right? He'll figure out how to do what it's at. But when you're talking on a grand scale, it's a big challenge, and that's why someone's going to need
So let's just dig into that. So therefore that's why we need an external agency, or external person, to oversee that. So, but can you just tell us a little bit of what's involved in that? And also, I think people are not aware of the difference between what we call production and then food service, just the difference between these levels.
So most Vaad Hakashrus are pretty much involved only in food service, which means restaurants, caterers, hospitals, nursing homes, schools, etc. You can call it bakeries, ice cream stores, but that's called food service. Most of the national hashgachos and they are involved in production. Production facilities are very much a static operation, meaning they're not changing their ingredients without sitting shiva nekiyim, without sitting for carving over, especially now the president just brought in, and it is a concern, he just brought in all these Make America Healthy Again, right? So they're getting rid of all these colors, and right. So we have to be very careful with. You're going to start seeing products that used to have ashgacha, but they're going to use a coloring called carmine, which is the secretion from a beetle, right? Which is a problem with kashrus, right? That because they can't use the red dye color, etc. So one has to be very careful. But in general, companies are keeping the same ingredients, and they're sourcing the same ingredients, and they're not changing. But there's as you get to the degree of difficulty in a company, that's the level of supervision. Obviously, meat and wine will be on the highest level of what we the shechita and the wine with the grapes. You're having the Jew involved in the entire step of the process. And then it goes lower, and so agencies work together on establishing normal standards of visitation to different types of companies, and they're going, and people go, and they don't make announced visits. They show up around the world. We have people in over 100 countries in the world going to various places, and they go and they independently audit the factory, and they'll tell you what's going on. The food service. On Monday you can get this oil, Tuesday you can get that oil, Wednesday you can get this oil, and it's all coming from the same, you need somebody who's responsible to be checking in every product that's coming in there. And it's sometimes it's very easy, that they're only getting from a frum distributor, right? Only getting from a frum distributor. But a frum distributor's definition of what's kosher may not be what the agency's definition of kosher is. So you have to be careful, and I get the questions every week from I got this product, I got that product from restaurants and caterers that they got it, but I got it from Chaim Yankel. It was a from why do I have to check what I'm getting from them? You have to check what you're getting from them, and sometimes you're going into the non-kosher supermarket, right? And even in the kosher supermarket, who's packing out the products that are going there? If they got I don't want to say the name of a company, but if they got a potato chip that's not kosher, right? You have six flavors of potato chips. The plain and the ruffled are kosher, but the barbecue and the don't have a reputable hashgacha. Right? So do you think that the guy who's unpacking the potato chips in the store sees if by mistake they got 12 cases of potato chips and one of them was the wrong one? You think he's noticing that? Right? So everyone has to, if there's nothing else that we get from today, everyone has to double check and triple check when they buy it. This time of year, or Pesach time on steroids, right? Because by Pesach time you have the same products with similarly looking labels. It might say Pesach on, it might say Passover on it, but what happens when the person is going away to their vacation for Pesach and they're not interested in any Pesach items, and they're going shopping 2 weeks before Pesach, and they end up taking the Pesach onion soup mix, and they see before they're checking out that they're when they're still shopping that this is the Pesach one, I don't want it. They put it down on the wrong shelf, and then someone takes the wrong one. You just have to be very careful, and that's even in the kosher supermarkets. No matter how many people are going around on a regular basis, right? You just need to take the extra half a second, make sure it's there. There's a new label, right? There's a mashed potato mix right now that I think I get on a regular basis. Didn't have the Hakashrus on it, right? The supermarkets have a sign. They forgot to put the OU on the label. It is still certified, right? But you have to look if you see it. And then what happens? You come Pesach time and your kids come home from Eretz Yisrael and they check your pantry A to Z and they say, this doesn't have Hakashrus and this doesn't, right? Everyone's experienced that, right? You have to be careful what you're buying.
Let's make it even more real. So like I walk into a restaurant and I sit down and I order my food and I eat my wonderful meal and it's somebody's birthday, anniversary, or whatever else it is. Like what's going on behind the scenes to ensure that what's coming into my plate is actually kosher in an average place? So
the OU requires a mashgiach tamidi in all of our restaurants and caterers, opening to closing. The OU is in a unique position that we're, especially in Manhattan, where there's no real unified Vaad. Right, so the OU has taken a position that this is what we feel is needed. You want it, you want it. You don't want it, you don't want it. And we have many that do. We have many that don't. And that's the. So there is someone in the place who is verifying everything that comes in. In most other places, there is going to be someone who, however they'll call it, a neman Hakashrus and a yotzei v'nichnas. There's someone in every place who's designated and deputized to be responsible for checking in all the products. Whether you call him a mashgiach, whether you call him the owner, whether you call him the manager, whatever you call him, there's someone who's checking in everything. In addition, when you're getting your food, you want to make sure that the meat and fish are kept separate in the kitchen, and you want to make sure that someone is turning on the fires that is a Jew to avoid what we call bishul akum. You want to be sure that the vegetables are checked properly or sourced from places that have hashgacha. So someone has to be taking responsibility for that. And a klal gadol for people to realize, if it sounds too good to be true, it might be.
If the prices are too good and things like that. That's a really good point. And what happens, like, let's say in a situation where like your mashgiach doesn't turn up? So how does that restaurant, or why doesn't the restaurant close that day? How does that work?
So generally that's why I was a rabbi for many years, and I still said Baruch Hashem for Shabbos, because then my cell phone couldn't ring, in spite of the fact that my daughter was born on Yom Kippur and my cell phone rang in the middle of Kol Nidre, but whatever. That's a different story. Yeah. But Baruch Hashem, that's what we've put in where we lock the refrigerators, in many places we lock the gas, we lock the kitchen, and we have a lockbox in the kitchen like you have on your doors, a push button digital. We have a lockbox in the kitchen where the keys are, but owners do not have a combination, so they have to reach out to you in order to get in. Sometimes it could take a little while. One advantage I have in many situations, I have someone, people in Manhattan who are not far away. You can tell them, yeah, can you run over there? But I won't tell them to run over there until I have someone who's at least on his way to get started. But that's why many of our restaurants complain when they want to open on Motzei Shabbos. So a number of restaurants have just stopped opening on Motzei Shabbos for a different reason. They used to be the only fancy restaurant in town, and people from here and from New Jersey and from Brooklyn would all come to there. Now, Baruch Hashem, many of our communities have local restaurants, and they say there's not the foot traffic to make it worth it to have to wait this time after Shabbos to get there and to start so But that's that's one of the things that is what I'm spending my 4 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. Mashgiach sick, Mashgiach not here. I have a couple of chats with Mashgiach in a pinch, right? Who's available if someone's not able to come.
Can you talk just a little bit of difference between a mashgiach and a field representative? Like, how does this work exactly?
So a field representative is someone who is assigned to visit the places and be on top. The way the OU system, as Rabbi Ya'akov likes to call it, is he quotes a pasuk in Koheles. It says Gavoa Gavoa Shomer Gvoim Aleim. That it's a tiered system. That there's no one person who has the ultimate responsibility. You can always go above them. Right? Whether it starts from the mashgiach, go to the representative who's coming, it goes to the RC, the rabbinic coordinator where I am. I have a number of supervisors as well. Goes to the head of Hakashrus, and the OU also has a lay board that they answer to as well. So there's a level. The representative is the one who would be the initial contact. Rabbi, we got this product. It used to have this. Is it okay? Not. If he doesn't know, he'll put it on a chat. One of the things that I've created for most of the establishments that we have is I have a mashgiach chat for all the mashgichim, but I also have site-specific ones for each place where it has myself and the field representative and 2 other RCs in the office and one other person. That you have 5 people that if I'm sitting here and I have my phone on airplane mode, someone else can actually answer it. But it also means that you're not alone. Right, that a person's going to ask once, going to ask twice. If you don't get back to them, then they're going to stop asking and do their own thing. So it's very important that you have the layered system that people feel that people are getting back to them.
Incredible. I just want to interrupt you for a second. In the Vaad Hakashrus over here locally, we have a similar system where we have there's probably around 80 food establishments, and so we have what's called an SSAI, which is Shomer Shabbos approved individuals. That's so the mashgiach level. They're the people boots on the ground in every restaurant. And then the people who, younger people who are training, or people who need money, they get trained to qualify for this. And then you have the field representatives who are going store to store, checking in every single day, overseeing them. And so, it just understand that there's multiple tiers besides cameras and office checks and all the background in order to ascertain all these differences. Rabbi Schreier, could you just speak to the difference between let's say a Hakashrus versus a Vaad, just to understand how this works?
So I forwarded Rabbi Trump a video. I'm not sure how much everyone's going to see it, but you can watch and listen to the.
Let's make a little. Sorry, I should have put a screen over here. There we go. We'll make a little louder. There we go. Okay.
Symbol that countless people rely on. From your local grocery shelf to the global community at large. Every dollar OU kosher earns is reinvested, not into shareholders, but wherever it's needed most.
80% of New Orleans, including much of downtown, is underwater.
After the devastation of Hurricane Katrina, the OU was on the scene.
It's only a minute and a half, don't worry.
Lives. When COVID-19 pushed India's healthcare system to its very limits, the OU stepped in, delivering essential life-saving medical equipment. Amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the OU has been on the ground, evacuating families and providing food, shelter, and critical support. And even beyond moments of crisis, the OU is there, building lasting change through programs including education and vocational training for individuals with special needs, empowering them with the tools they need to thrive. Choosing OU kosher means becoming a part of something larger than certification. It means extending your impact beyond the store shelves to make a difference across the globe.
So I think the answer to that question is I don't think there's anybody in this room or in this community who, forgetting about food for a second, hasn't benefited from the OU. I think Rabbi Glasser was here last Shabbos. Right? He's the director of community engagement with the OU. But between Yachad, NCSY, I know Rabbi Ashi spent a number of summers in NCSY Kollel. My kids have as well. Everyone has a part. Yachad, another parts. JLIC, right, on the college campuses. There's not a person who doesn't benefit from what the OU does. As a national hashgacha, the OU reinvests in the Jewish community. After whatever costs involved in in running the organization, everything goes back into the Jewish community. You see the examples of Katrina, hurricanes, national disasters, helping to rebuild communities, etc. That's what they're doing. People often ask, how come the OU has ashgacha on detergent? How come the OU has on bottled water? So I'll tell you the answer. The OU does tell the company that it does not need, and they say afal pichein. The OU doesn't ask. They'll visit a couple of times a year just to keep honest and whatnot. But I would tell you to make sure that all the ingredients in
Tide?
they're asking for it. That's what they want. The JLIC exists because of Tide. Okay, so that's really the answer to that question. A lot of these programs exist because of these many companies that have chosen to take the OU in spite of the fact that, I remember it's not the case anymore, but I remember many years before Pesach, the OU told Lipton Tea, the process they were using for decaffeination was acceptable for Pesach, and they didn't need a P, so it was in the green pages, whatever the pages they have in the book, they were acceptable for Pesach. Lipton nevertheless made a special run to label it OUP because that's what they want. So, we're going to say no. Right? We tell them it's not needed. We show them it's not needed in the book. Right? They say afal pichein, they say they want it. So this is what the OU is doing, and this begins with a tier of rabbinic field representatives who are visiting day and week. There are some factories that are operating 24/7, that there are mashgichim in places. Right now, anyone like to drink wine for Kiddush? Right, starting now through Sukkot, there's a team of mashgichim in all parts of the country and Pesach time in other parts of the world that are doing a grape crush. Right, all from people with Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, right, this is a time that the grape crush is going on. That's what's fueling the ashgacha and the people who every time you make Kiddush on a Friday night, whether it's with grape juice or whether it's with wine, right? This is a time of the year that this is being produced, and that's where people are going around the country to operate. When you're talking about a local Vaad Hakashrus, a local Vaad Hakashrus has to exist. It has to be able to function, and no matter how much you think they're not making ends meet. Doesn't matter what, doesn't matter where, right? They exorbitant salaries, and they in order to keep functioning, and as they add places, and then subtract a place, add a place, right? It just keeps, you have to keep growing with the amount of people who are going. But I'll tell you a little secret that the hardest thing is to get places to pay. Right, they're not the first place that they're going to try to cut the corner is paying the rabbi, paying the Vaad, paying, and they know to some extent, especially in a local community, that the Vaad's not going to pull their ashgacha. Right, you bring in treif meat, the Vaad will pull your ashgacha. But short of that, you can be mean, you can be nasty, you cannot pay. Rabbi, tomorrow, right? And that's where you need to create that layer of Rabbi Luba and Shalita, who's a senior rabbinic coordinator for OU for many years, retired recently. He wrote in an article the challenge of a pulpit rabbi being involved in Hakashrus, and he said the job of a rabbi day and night is having done his kol adam kavschus, is to judge people favorably, find the good in people. The person just did the most heinous act, and the rabbi still has to be friendly to him. Right? Doesn't matter. Right? The job of a kashrus professional is kabdeu v'chashdeu, which loosely translated is respect and suspect. Right? The job, right? So balancing those two together makes it very difficult, and therefore it's essential for the OU to and for a Vaad to have what we'll call a separation of church and state. Now, I'm not talking about church. I'm talking about when it comes to the finances. When it comes to the finances, the OU has a collections department. Obviously, they interface with the rabbi who's responsible for the company. Right? For example, I told so they contacted me this week about a certain place. They're making a change with the finances. I said, wait till after Rosh Hashanah. He made a shidduch for his daughter, and they're making a vort tonight, Sunday night. Right? I said, wait till after Rosh Hashanah. Don't bother him today. Right? But I'm not the one calling the owner to say, my high. Why? What's going on? All right, the rabbis put in a lot of effort, and they meet regularly to determine the policies, what are going on. And I'm going to share a story that'll give you a little bit of an insight in the rabbis are involved in a much higher level of trying to understand what the needs of the community are. But the rabbis can't be the one who's going to, I'll just use my brother, who's not an example, but just going to Stop, Chop, and Roll and ask it and say, Avi, you didn't pay, what's going on? Right? The rabbi can't do that. But someone else can go over to the person and say. So it's essential to have that type of separation, both a rabbinic board who doesn't have anything to do with the finances, and a lay board who interfaces with the rabbis and does their, well, quote unquote, dirty work that keeps the rabbis clean within this conversation. But I want to share a story because this comes to the question of how do you determine whether you should give a hashgacha or not give a hashgacha. So I'm going to talk about a sports bar, but not the one here. Right, for a good reason. In Teaneck, there was a group of investors who wanted to open a sports bar in Teaneck. They came and they met with the RCBC at the time, and the RCBC was very reluctant to give the hashgacha. There was a bar, the message they were sending, they didn't want it. They came to the OU and asked the OU to give the hashgacha. And that'll come to one of the other questions Rabbi Trump had, but I'll address it here. That the OU in general, as Rabbi Glasser is the director of community engagement, if the OU's mandate is to try and strengthen local communities, for the OU to come into a community and start giving hashgacha undermines the ability for the Rabbanim to give hashgacha. So the OU will not give a hashgacha on a place, not in the 5 towns, not in Queens, not in Bergen County, etc., but without the blessing of the rabbi, where the rabbi is going to write to you, with Rabbi, we give you with our blessing, right, in writing that we want you to give the hashgacha. So what happened was they wrote us. We met with them. We did an inspection on the establishment, and the rabbis met and they said and they withdrew their permission to the OU to give the hashgacha. What happened was they realized that this store was within 500 feet of 2 different high schools, and they felt it. And then the rabbanim, the schools came and complained. That sometimes there are many factors that people are not aware of that affect the decision. And I've always heard the mashal given that the Chafetz Chaim says that we're all living in the world of the shin of Ashrei, where we're missing either the first 2 words or the last word. So let's play it out. Shomer Hashem es kol avav es kol Rishayim. Right, Hashem watches over all who He loves and all the Rishayim. Doesn't sound so great, right? Es kol avav es kol Rishayim yashmin. Also doesn't sound so great. We destroy those who we love, right? So we're coming in the middle of that sentence, right? So often when something goes on and everyone starts blogging and texting and WhatsApping and sending everyone what's going on, there are a lot of factors that you're missing. I know many times when I'll receive a call from a Rav, who's the Rav of a restaurateur, a caterer, he told me this A, B, C, D, E. I said, Rabbi, did he tell you D, E, and F? Right? Oh no, he never told. Oh no, say that's often, and a rabbi's job is to maintain confidentiality at all times with everyone. So often they're going to be sounding off on the blogs. This happened and this, and I heard this and I heard that, and the rabbis remain silent and they don't respond, and it goes, and I'm specifically not talking about this community, even though there's plenty to talk about. I'm keeping clean from that. But that's something people need to realize, that there's a lot more than meets the eye. Certainly, if someone's trying to put out a message that's consistent with their narrative, they're obviously going to skip or delete a couple of the factors that are made to determine. But I think that this story with the sports bar is, and in the end, the OU did not give the hashgacha. I ended up getting a private rabbi, and today that sports bar is not in business. But that's not, in the end, they agreed they were really struggling. They came back to the OU and they would not open the bar, before 6 o'clock in the evening, right, until school end. School. There was a number of conditions that we worked with the Rabbanim to allow them to give the supervision. But it's something that's instructive to understand how the hashgachos interface together. I would tell you that there are at least 7 places I know of in the 5 towns where the OU is giving hashgacha. But you will not see in one store an OU Tuda. The OU, working with the local Vaad, will give hashgacha for wholesale purposes. So in the store, you're not going to see a Tuda, but they're able to sell to some OU caterers. They're able to sell product out of the community, etc. That's something that's working together with the local communities to help the Vaad, because if this store has an extra revenue stream that helps them that wouldn't necessarily help them with the Vaad, it helps the Vaad, because it continues, the place stays afloat and keeps going and is operating, and that's something that's very important for people to realize, that there aren't so many things that you have a light. I think the one of the things that the original story about the Darryl Strawberry and the colon cancer is Rabbi Google, along with AI and ChatGPT together, have made us all into the world's experts in everything. And sometimes, there's a lot. The Ikar Chasam in Sefer from our Shin of Ashrei is often what's going on in what we have. If everyone's going to come to the doctor and the doctor is going to prescribe something for your heart, and you say, "Doctor, what about this?" And who are you? Now, Baruch Hashem, the community today is 40 steps ahead of where it might have been 50 years ago, and the Torah learning that exists in this community is unparalleled. The minyanim that exist, and I'm sorry that the collateral damage of Achayim Vashalom has been many of the shul extra minyanim has happened. But just think how many Armenian Heshmei Rabbis are going on there on a daily basis, and how many people, probably even in this room, who might have said, "I'm going to forego minyan because it doesn't work with my schedule." Oh, I can go at 6:15 to mincha. Oh, great! Whatever it is, how many people are able to do that? But in spite of that, and in spite of all that we have, there's a lot that we don't know. And the rabbis the Vaad is very careful to have, the Vaad here I know is very careful to have a rabbinic board that's representative of the community at large, of not only the Young Israels and not only the Shliblach, every shape and size, and they along that have a rabbinic board, which one of the things that Rabbi Trump had asked me about is how we prevent a certain level of feeling of monopoly and other type of situations, and I'll give you the flip side of your monopoly question. Look at the places in this community that are not under the Vaad, and ask yourself what the standards in these places are. Right? When you walk into a Vaad establishment, right? They have it transparent, right? And I want to just give an editorial comment for a second, and it's something I said many years ago, and it's still holding true in the world and in the Jewish world. The word tolerance has been mistranslated in the dictionary. Tolerance used to mean that we're able to listen and we're able to hear each other and hear other people's opinions. Unfortunately, probably about 30 years ago, the translation of tolerance changed from if you agree with me, you're tolerant. If you don't agree with me, you're not tolerant. That's how it works. And I'm not going into the politics of assassinations, and that's not what I'm just saying. That if we stop for a second to think, there was once a frum politician who said to me, he's no longer alive, but he said to me, when he looks for a product with the OU and a Hasidic Ashgach. I'm not saying which one it is, and you'll hear the story and you'll understand what I'm saying. Because this is very instructive to a lot of the tension that exists in this community. He said he looks for the OU because he knows the OU is the best Ashgach out there. Elamai, the OU is looking to serve the wider community, so things might not be Pas Yisrael, might not be Chalav Yisrael, might not be Yashan, etc. Right? And on the flip side, he said he knows the Hasidic Ashgacha is worthless, But he knows that the OU will make sure that if they say that the Pas Yisrael and the Chalav Yisrael and the Yoshan, that they will actually be. Now, I'm not saying that, but the idea of tolerance is, if you're not makbid on Chalav Yisrael, but a good segment of the community is makbid on Chalav Yisrael, if you give the good segment of the community who is makbid an ice cream bar that has an OUD, they won't touch it. But if I give you a Mahadran ice cream bar that has an OU and has Chalav Yisrael, you might still eat it because you might still think it's not good, and you might still be racist and think Chalav Yisrael is terrible and spoils in 5 minutes. But other than that, you're going to eat it. So the same thing with Pas Yisrael, the same thing with Yashana. So if a bakery has taken upon itself to take on these additional hidurim, standard, whatever words you want to use, right? That doesn't mean they're not being tolerant of you. It means they're trying to maximize their market capability. That you're not going to you'll still eat something that's yashan. You'll still eat something that's Pas Yisrael, but they won't eat something that's not Pas Yisrael. And they won't eat something that's not Chalav Yisrael. So that's something that comes with a unified standard when there's one Vaad in a community that's working together to try and service the community and be as transparent as possible. Besides being on the window, on the Vaad website is that same tuda. So someone hears that they're in Lo Aleinu, it happens, people sitting shiva and they're getting from a place under the Vaad and they don't know which place it is. So go on the website, you can see. They tell you exactly what it is. And that's for the community purpose. It's not to undermine someone. I remember, and it'll answer a little bit. When I started in the OU, I was working with Rabbi Eisen, who's the head of the Vaad now. I remember that growing up in Brooklyn, there was a time when there were 2 to 3 tudos in the window. I still remember the article. It's an interview with Steve Savitsky when they brought Rabbi Eisen here. Is that his goal was to prevent a situation which was the direction the community was heading, of having 3 tudos in every window. And when he was doing that, he reached out to Rabbi Genak, the head of the OU, and he asked him for some advice about how to do that. And he said, Rabbi Genak said to Mr. Savitsky that I have the world's expert in my office. Now, Baruch Hashem, Steve has been a successful businessman for many years, and when he hears he has the world's expert, he said, I want him. And that was, I say thank you to Steve because I have my job today, but that's a different, but that was, the goal was finding that person who could be the unifying factor of, that he's respected as having been the person in the OU, but is also someone who was involved in Ashgacha and Flatbush, who brought up the standards, that to try and unify the community. Everything in life is, growth pains take time, and things were tried to happen overnight when they should have taken a little longer. But today, you have, I think when he came there were 30 places. Now there are a lot more. Right? That's the natural growth of the community. But that's when people look to a standard that works and is effective, people look to the Vaad of the 5 towns. And that's something that everyone in the room, whether you like the Vaad, you don't like the Vaad, is something you can be proud of, because that's something that unifies the community. It doesn't create a monopoly situation, because I don't think the Vaad office is allowed to write a check. I think the check comes from one of the Young Israels. Right? So everything they're sending out has to be approved by someone or a board. Right? So there's no person who's going to, whether they charge an extra $5, an extra $10, is going to be pocketing any of this money. That's a concern of a monopoly, etc. The Vaad here is for the community. The Rabbanim work together amazingly together, even though everyone has their opinions and their situations and their clientele and their constituents, but they work amazingly together for the unification of the community, and that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, so just a jump in on that, because this is so important to appreciate. Just locally, the structure is besides the Shomer Shabbos individuals, and then the field representatives, and then the administration, who who are overseeing everything that's going on. Then there's the board. So there's the lay board for finances, and there's the rabbinic board who are not paid for anything. They're just giving their time to get insulted by misunderstanding people. There are 9 of them in the community. I used to be on it for 6 years, and I used to work with Rabbanim across the spectrum to discuss like policy. So as an example about policy, one of the things Rabbi Schreier just mentioned is, the right-wing side of the community would like it to be this Mahadrin and not Mahadrin, for the Young Israel, Pas Yisrael, all those things. And on the more modern Orthodox side of the community, we didn't want it to make a two-tier system, so we negotiated in policy to have a transparent system where every restaurant has a checklist of its standards, which means that therefore the restaurant owner will decide their standards based on the consumer. So not everybody who wants Young Israel wants Pas Yisrael, not everybody who wants Yashar wants to have extra Hidurim. There's lots of different things, so we created a checklist, and every restaurant has it on its door or behind the counter. You can see what its standards are, and it can make business decisions based on that. That was a decision made by a community itself for the needs of its community without the finances. There's no finances. The lay board is only ensuring that it covers its expenses, and we're barely even covering its expenses on a daily basis, because Rabbi Schreier pointed out, getting money, unfortunately, the shul is always the last thing. The school, the shul, and the Vaad, Hakashrus, all the religious institutions are the last things people pay. They never negotiate with the flowers and everything, but the shul rental hall, they don't pay. So the same thing with Kashrus. It's people take their time when it comes to this. I just want to Rabbi Schreier didn't mention this because he's such a mensch. But just the difference between, like let's say, the OU and these many other hashkachas, which are really essentially family businesses, right? And so a lot of the other hashkachim you'll see, most of the Hasidic things which are all seen as so high, they're family businesses. And yes, they give a lot of tzedakah, and that's wonderful, but there are people getting rich on this, and that's fine, and that's wonderful. And let them do well, but understand that it's not a community institution. It's not a Vaad Hakashrus, and it's not the OU as a national hashkachah, which is reinvesting its money with oversight for a lay board. It's not one person or one family that's in charge. You have to understand the differences between those. And sometimes when people try to say, "Oh, it's so much better if," you have to understand that there's a cost to that, and those decisions are not being made in the same way as perhaps where the interests of community-minded institutions as well.
So I'll answer that with the Ask OU seminar that the OU runs every other summer. One of the days of the Ask OU is what they call Shechita Day. So in the morning, Rabbi Teitelbaum was a nearby the Rav, who's also the Rav Machshir at Ali, right, Meal Mart, along with the OU. He comes and talks about different matters Shechita related, but one of the things that always stayed with me was, he said, what's the sign of a good hashgacha? A sign of a good hashgacha is not how large the beard is, how long the payas are, how big the hat is, if the brim is big enough, you're right. Yeah. But he said it's how they deal with the criticism. Meaning, someone comes to you and tells you they saw someone putting a roll on the grill and serving it with a fish cake. Right. So the fish cake is fish, and the grill is very fleshik. Right. You're eating fish together. It's a problem. So the real Vaad Hakashrus or the real hashgacha is going to say, "Thank you for bringing it to our attention. We've changed it. We put it in a toaster. Now they're toasting the rolls and not doing it." The one who's not interested in the criticism will tell you, "What are you talking about? It's not true." Or say, "No, they kasher the grill each time before they put it." It's not realistic, right? So yes, right. There is a certain level of family business in the. But you come very quickly to see the different people and the different standards of even these hashgachos, because you come in contact with them, because very often, Baruch Hashem, with the mixing of families, you'll get a caterer who's doing an event and say, "Oh, they want Rabbi X to be overseeing as well." So you begin to see how they act and how they behave, and how who the ones who are. Will tell you, "Oh, you're the one there? Okay, no problem, I don't need to come." Right? And the one who comes and then check, it says, "You can't use Heinz ketchup, and you can't use this, and you can't..." Right? They go through A to Z, say, "Okay, get the vegetables from here because we have a higher standard of vegetable." Right? The one who's doing that and is actually going to be there and send somebody to be there when it's produced and send someone there, that's a different level. And the story I like to tell, and it's instructive because Hebrew lettering is just wonderful on packaging. There's a small company that makes some hummus. You might have heard of it once, called Sabra Salads. Right? Pepsi bought it. A whole story. But many years ago, they had been under Hashgacha X and a Hasidic Hashgacha. They decided to switch to another reputable Hashgacha, but they were in the process of trying to find the Hasidic Hashgacha. So I'll say it was Hashgacha, it was only because it went under the OK. Until they found the Hasidic Hashgacha that they were going to give, they put on the OK on one side, they put Hashgacha Rav Daniel Levi Shlita on the other side. Rabbi Daniel Levi Shlita now, Zichrono Livracha, was the head of the OK. Right? So they didn't see any precipitous drop in sales because they had it written in Hebrew. So we had, people can't just assume that something that's written in Hebrew is okay, is fine, is wonderful, is great. You have to know who the people are and figure out, and that's comes from experience of who you're dealing with and what you're dealing with. But these Hasidic Hashgachas, most of them that are reputable are very early.
Fantastic. Really appreciate this. I wish there was more time for more questions. We want to take a moment to thank our Schreier, not just for being here today, but for all you do for the community and the selfless amount of hours that nobody will ever know of what you do to ensure that the community is eating and appreciating the highest level of Hakashrus. Shana Tova to everybody. Thank you so much for that.